international investor is, I want to be able to share that story with you. Why is it that, well, I've decided to do long distance international investing? And I could tell you the whole story about, all the emotions and the sentiment and the fact that, I really wanted to, start buying properties here in Europe. But you know what? I'm not even going to bore you with that, because one of the things that I've always learned in my corporate life is, there's a lot about emotion that goes around, and emotion is great. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to, if you're going to put your money or anybody else's capital to work, you need to have some sound logic behind it. So yes, I will tell you that a number of years ago, it was probably around 2012, I was looking at buying a number of properties. I was looking at buying them because I'd read, like most people, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I got all inspired, and I was living in Europe at the time, and I thought about going to buy property here in Europe. And so the thing is when after I'd read the book and I started looking at here in Spain specifically, I live in Barcelona, I started looking at, buying property in Barcelona. And so when I started looking at the properties based on what I'd read and what I'd known, the numbers just weren't working out for me. So I thought, well, you know what, let me not buy apartment buildings. Let me go and buy parking spaces, because those seem to be working out. Well, when I did the numbers once again, they just didn't look like they did back in the States. So for a number of different reasons, I decided to go back to the States. But what I want to do now is share the top 10 reasons with you, because this isn't just about me wanting to invest in the States. I mean, there are some very serious reasons why I've decided for my portfolio and my situation to invest in multifamily properties back in the US. There's 10 reasons, but actually I put them in 3 main buckets. And I like to think about people lifting weights and being strong, because that's what I like to make sure that my capital is working in the most of its ability. So I call it the PEC, or the PEC method, the PEC, which leads you to the US. So just before I start that, I'm going to just one more time just welcome those of you who are joining us in the room. Appreciate you stopping in. My name is Billy Keels. I'm founder and CEO of Keep On Cashflow. Today I'm going to talk to you about the top 10 reasons for investing in U.S. real estate, specifically for those of us that are living outside of the States. Once again, I appreciate your hearts. Feel free to leave the hearts. Feel free to share this with your community as well. But let me get into the top 10 reasons why I think it makes a lot of sense, especially for foreigners or non-U.S. citizens, to invest in the U.S. So I talked about the PEC. So the first is P. And when I look at P, it is around population. So this is one of the main drivers, right? When you think about in Europe, yeah, of course, there's about 740 million people that live in Europe, which is an amazing number, right? But when you think about Europe, it's 38 different countries. And so, you compare that to the 350 million and also growing, just like in Europe. And in the US, there's 350 million people that live there. So it's a great population already. And the fact of the matter is, when you compare that to Europe, because that's what I want to compare this to, right? Because that's where I'm living, is in the US, you have 350 million people. And those 350 million people are, used to be able to say a common, common language. Now we've got, a richness of language. But there's a common currency and a constant federal law, right? So whether you're a person who's in Hawaii and you want to buy a property in Missouri, well, you can do that. You don't have to think about anything. It's the same currency, same federal law. There could be some things that are a little bit different. But now let me talk to you about someone who's living in Spain. If you want to go and buy a property in St. Petersburg, Russia, or somewhere in Portugal, chances are you're going to have to, well, number one, you're definitely going to change currency if you're going from Spain to Russia. You're going to have some language issues. You're going to have a number of probably different challenges that you wouldn't have if you were just buying there. So 350 people, common currency, and also common federal law makes it amazing. Something else that happens when you think about population, the second reason what took me to the States. If you think about the big populations, like there are 51 what we call metropolitan statistical areas. So let's just think of these as really big cities. There are 51 of them in the U.S. And of these 51, there are 51 that have more than 1 million people, right? 51. I would be curious for those of you that are watching, if you can, do you know how many cities there are in Europe that have more than 1 million people? If you could do me a favor and just tell me what you think that number is. I'm going to share it with you in just a second. So feel free to leave a number in there. I'll give you just a second. I'm not going to wait too much time. But the thing is in Europe, there are 18 cities with more than 1 million people. So when you compare those 18 to 51 MSAs, I mean, once again, it's a big population. So as an investor, you want to place your capital where there are people. So that's the population. Next, I want to move into another area, which is employ, but it can actually be employers or employees or employment, let's say. And the biggest thing that is important as a productivity measure, if you look in the US, another thing is they have a gross domestic product, which is basically the productivity for a given entity. Let's say in this case, it's going to be for a country, is $18 trillion. When you compare that against Europe, well, Europe has a bigger GDP, which is 18.5 trillion, at least as of today, and both growing. But the thing is, once again, that's across 38 different countries. So, you're looking at 18 trillion versus, the 18 trillion divided by 38 and things like that. So it's a big productivity machine in the States. Also, too, another thing that I like to think about as we look at this employment portion is unemployment. Now, this is one of the best factors. Like in the US, we're currently at a 4.7% unemployment rate, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. When you look at that across Europe, Europe today is roughly around 8.6 unemployment rate across Europe. But if you drill down into specific countries, some are doing better, some are doing worse. I'll use my example where I am in Spain today. Spain has an unemployment rate of 17.7%. So as an investor who's looking to place capital, I want to place my capital and my investors' capital where there are people that are working, right? And so a 4.7% rate of unemployment to me is pretty attractive. The lower the better, of course, but it's half of what Europe is, and well, it's a third of where I am living in Spain. So another thing, two things quickly. Also in employment, just to let you know, there are 33% of the top 50 Fortune 500 companies that have their base in the US, right? What happens with big companies? Big companies attract people. When you have people that are moving towards a company, guess what? As an investor in real estate, commercial, multifamily real estate, that's a very good thing. Because, well, once again, it's a big motor. And then lastly, from the E, which is the fourth thing, there is an average household income in the US of $60,000 as the median income. And for me, as a person who invests in Class B multifamily dwellings, it's great, right? Because I know that there are people that are able to pay the rent, right? And so that is something that is great. Now, I've given you a lot of hard facts, but I also too want to share something with you, the C in PEC, which is cultural differences. Now, I just talked to you about the $60,000 income, right? And so that's a great thing. But there's also, there are, I don't know if you know, I'd be interested. Do you know how many times the average American changes their jobs through their career? If you could do me a favor, if you would also just, you could push here or put in the number. Let me know how many times you think the average US worker changes jobs. And I'll tell you another reason why I love rental real estate. Well, because they change jobs roughly 11, on average 11. Oh, okay, cool. Gonzalo, thanks for that. 10. You're very close, Gonzalo. Very, very close. The average American worker changes jobs 11 times in their career, right? And so think about the fact that when somebody's changing their jobs 11 times during their career, it probably means that they're going to be much less likely to want to be tied down to a mortgage, to have to sell their property, because unlike Europe, typically, like someone like me, I was born in Ohio, and then afterwards we moved to Colorado, and then afterwards we moved to, a lot of people that I went to college with, it's the same thing. You go to school in the Southwest Ohio, then you get your first job, it's in New York City, then you're changing, you're going to San Francisco, then you're going to Austin, then you're going to Chicago. And who wants to be tied down to trying to sell your house when you're going to get a promotion and you're moving right away, right? In the US, it's very commonplace to have a change of job, so you don't want to get tied down. And one of the ways you can do that is renting. So for me, once again, as an investor who's placing my capital and my investors' capital, this is something that's very attractive to me. Lots of, I've lived in France, Italy, and Spain over the last couple of years, and typically you're working in one of two cities. And well, you work in one of those two cities and you don't really do much else. You may change jobs, but it's still within the same city, so you keep your house and all that stuff. So it's just another reason that's attractive for me and for my investors to do that. Also, of the 350 million people that live in the States, there are actually 110 million registered renters. There are roughly about 41 million units, but 110 million registered renters. Think about that. I'm placing my capital in my investors' capital. And this is a matter of going where, we can add value. And when you think of a 110 million registered renters, it's a great way for captive audience. And that's one of the main reasons that I do it. And then also too, I'm a multifamily investor, and roughly 60% of those 110 million people in the U.S. are investing in multifamily, meaning they're renting in multifamily dwellings. So once again, I am a multifamily investor of residential real estate. So these are just some of the things that we talked about. And so for those of you that are counting, you probably are thinking, well, Billy, you've only given us 9. What's the last one? Well, on average, it costs about $200,000 for a household in the States. And that's really attractive. Once again, when you compare that to, some of the major European cities, it'd be really difficult for you to buy anything for $200,000. Well, depending on which European city you're living in, right? Think of Paris, think of Moscow, think of London, think of Barcelona, Madrid. I mean, it's really tough. So listen, like I said, I just wanted to share this with you because one of the things that you've asked me to do in 2017 is start to share more content with you. I get this question all the time. And the fact that I get the question all the time from lots of different people, I just wanted to share it here with the community, right? So these are the top 10 reasons why I like to place my capital in rental real estate in the United States. I hope that this has been helpful for you. It gives you a couple more things to think about because you don't just want to be making decisions on where you place your capital or investors' capital because it just feels that way, right? Have some criteria. Hopefully this has been very helpful for you. Once again, my name is Billy Keels. I'm the founder and CEO of Keep On Cash Flow. What we want to continue to do here and what we will continue to do here is build bridges between Europe and the US, allowing you giving you more information so that you can go out and make the best decisions for you and yourself. If you want to know more about some of the stuff that I've talked about, you can actually find it in my book. And for those of you who've watched until now, I'm going to give this book to you. You can go to Amazon and you can find it there. It's called Grow Your Money the Smart Way by Billy Keels. But because you've invested your time with me, I want to just give you a token of my gratitude and ask you to go to keeponcashflow.com/grow, GROW. There you can download the book. You can start to find out a lot more about Keep On Cash Flow.